85% of London's boroughs voted Remain. And we're already seeing the effects of that result. ONS statistics show us that 58,000 fewer EU citizens are coming to the UK to work. 40% of companies tell us that they've seen their staff turnover increase since the referendum. And companies struggling to fill open positions say the number one cause is fewer applicants from EU citizens. It's not just about the City of London. Retailers, hospitality businesses, construction firms, they're all thinking about their need for talented people. In construction alone, our capital needs 13,000 extra new workers each year just to close the existing skills gap. Businesses are concerned, and they're right to be. London is facing a moment of jeopardy. Will London prevail? Well, it's proven resilient before, surviving the credit crunch, the initial shock of the referendum result, and a whole spate of recent terrorist attacks. But London is not invulnerable. Lord Butler, a long-time cabinet secretary, once argued that every department should have their own historical advisor. Well, perhaps London needs its own historical advisor too, because for all those who say London will just be fine, they are forgetting their history. London might be a great global city today, but it wasn't ever thus. London was the financial and entrepreneurial capital of the world until 1918, when it was overtaken by New York. London's status as a great global port was severely damaged when the old Docklands failed to keep pace with changes in container shipping. And Greater London's population was at a high of 9 million in the 1930s and fell to a low of 7 million by the 80s. Brexit doesn't mean we're heading for disaster. This isn't a speech about Project Fear 2.0. But I'm not saying London will be just fine either. Events matter. Successful cities can derail. Even Rome fell. So we can't be complacent. Sometimes the free market needs a gentle nudge to move in the right direction. Canary Wharf, that bastion of the free market, didn't come about through laissez-faire capitalism. It took government policy to stimulate its redevelopment. A quarter century ago, London was in the doldrums, with poor transport, failing schools, and an absence of leadership. It was in that moment of jeopardy that London First was born. A small group of business leaders got together, acting through enlightened self-interest, with a mission to make London the best city in the world in which to do business. They got behind Crossrail. They helped to create Teach First to support London's schools. They convinced the government to create the executive office of the Mayor of London. And sure enough, over the next 2 decades, London steadily climbed the global charts to take the top spot. Business leaned in. And if our capital is not to lose ground now, in this fresh moment of jeopardy, to the likes of Paris, Frankfurt, or Berlin, business must lean in once more. And that's why I joined London First, because I believe in the power of business to make a difference. At first glance, it might seem an odd career move. I'd spent 10 years running Save the Children, first at the helm of Save the Children UK, and then in 2010, helping to create Save the Children International, bringing together 30 different Save the Children organisations around the world. But I was born in London, I grew up in London, I live in London today, and throughout my time working in the States, in Uganda, and West Africa, I've always considered myself, at heart, a Londoner. And so in the face of Brexit, helping to keep my city, that vibrant, diverse place that we love, was a cause I could get behind. But how could I help? Could I make a difference? Well, the experience that I'd had at Save the Children, where I'd learned some crucial lessons, suggested I had something to bring to the table. First amongst those lessons was that to bring about big change, you need to convene support. Save the Children employed 25,000 people across 100 countries. Now that might sound like a lot, but it was as nothing in compared to the scale of our ambitions, that no child should die from preventable causes before their 5th birthday, that every child should have access to a quality education. You could employ 100 times that number of people and still not move the needle. We realized we had to convene support to help improve access to clean water, access to healthcare workers, to make sure that mothers with young babies had the nutrition that they needed. To solve problems this complex, you can't stand in a field on your own. You have to jump the fence. The second lesson Save the Children taught me might seem a bit counterintuitive to some of you. Certainly when I was at business school, I was taught that you need a USP. And even outside commerce, in the charity sector, the received wisdom is that you ought to marshal your resources behind a previously underfunded cause, where you can own the problem and the solution. But if you're talking about educating millions of children, you don't need clear blue water between yourself and the competition, and you don't need a niche. What you need is common ground. And in fact, a great USP for any small company with a big goal is the ability to find that common ground. Thirdly, I learned that to inspire your team, you need to work to a motivating outcome. You need to change the narrative. Don't focus on the problem. Focus on achievable outcome and really envisage what that success could look like. And I saw a great example of this when I visited Google's campus in California and met the team working on new products. And right at the beginning of developing a new product, they would start at the end of the process with the press release that they would want issued on launch day. Now, that might seem a bit cart before horse, but it works. And the last lesson I learned was that if you want something done, you have to engage the big beasts. If you're not dealing with decision makers, you're not going to get anywhere. Getting those heavy hitters on board means you have to put yourself in their shoes. They're time poor, they can be risk averse, they want to know what they stand to gain if they get involved. Getting these big hitters involved isn't easy, but it's not impossible. Quite apart from successive prime ministers, from Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, and David Cameron, at Save the Children, together with our partners, we were able to mobilize billionaire philanthropists like Bill and Melinda Gates, rock stars like Bono, and iconic businessmen like Richard Branson. So, with those 4 lessons in mind, how can London stay globally competitive in its moment of jeopardy? How can we protect our great city in the face of adversity and boost its resilience? How can we build a city where talented, skilled people want to live and work? And how can we do all of that in the face of Brexit? Well, we can't do it by ourselves. We have to convene support. And this is manifested in 2 ways. First, our own organization is all about galvanizing the power and influence of a diverse range of business leaders behind common campaign goals. Secondly, we work alongside other organizations. For instance, London needs better transport infrastructure. But it's no good us being a voice in the wilderness, bleating for investment in Crossrail 2. Instead, we work alongside northern cities to make the case that it's not a zero-sum game in transport investment between London and other cities around the country. investment in London can have benefit for the rest of the UK. Modelling shows that if infrastructure investment grows by just 1 percentage point the amount of goods and services that London can produce, this will benefit Britain's economy to the tune of an extra £1.9 trillion, of which £650 billion will be paid in extra taxes, which can be used in turn to invest in public transport around the whole country, which of course is what's needed. We've also galvanised support and built common ground around the skills gap. Now, we're quite small. We only employ 40 people. So we can't be retraining thousands of Londoners to close that skills gap. But what we can do is convene our business and university members around the table to set out a whole range of ways that they can step up to boost skills provision and persuade government to do their part, for example, through a reformed apprenticeship levy. And we've also set out a post-Brexit immigration system that's fair and balanced. And we've had to do this because currently 12% of London's working population is made up of EU citizens who contribute in all sorts of ways, including economically, to the tune of £28.5 billion each year. And we simply can't afford to lose that contribution in future. So we're proposing an immigration system that gives a route in for high-paid, high-skilled people who meet a minimum salary threshold proposed by government, agreed with business. We need a route in for exceptional talent, innovators and entrepreneurs who will create new businesses and more jobs. And crucially, we need to welcome in those people who help to fill our shortage occupations. People like brickies, chefs, carers, where there simply aren't enough people here to fill those jobs. And we've also worked on housing. Housing was a bit unedifying for me to see the rampant finger-pointing that all the parties are engaged in. So you've got government blaming developers for land banking. Developers are blaming local authorities and City Hall for bureaucratic planning. And you've got the media blaming foreigners. These are sideshow issues. Our job is to set out a realistic agenda that actually gets more homes built. London needs 66,000 new homes built every year, which is well over double what's currently going up. And the only way to achieve that is to make sure that you get everybody around the table, that you build common ground, and each party has to do more. Stop blaming each other. We need more money from central government, more land brought forward by local government, and more open-mindedness on all sides to modern methods of building, including build-to-rent. And we're engaging some big hitters to help us on this. So on housing, we have Rob Perrins, who's the chief executive of Berkeley Homes, who's engaged. We have Nigel Wilson, the chief executive of Legal & General, who sits on our board, as does David Sproul, who heads up Deloitte UK. They're giving us their time and lending us their influence and support. Because for all of us who are engaged in our campaigns on housing, skills, and transport, we are by instinct and by outlook believers in the power of cooperation. The power of cooperation to make the London of tomorrow stronger than the London of today. And we're united in our belief that that will be built on the foundation of good homes, great transport, and world-class talent. I am determined to stand up for our capital, its citizens and its workers, but also to show how it can work for the whole of the UK. I am determined that London's future performance lives up to London's present promise. And I am determined to make sure that London can respond to its moment of jeopardy. Thank you.